And welcome back to another episode of the Change Officer podcast here at STEP Conference special series. And this time with me, I have Katarina, who is the Global Director, Partner, Strategy at AESG, and also founder of Enrupt. Welcome to the show, Katarina.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. It's been a long day for you and for me, but it's exciting to have you on, and the topic that we will be discussing is quite exciting as well. Before we jump into that, what do you think about STEP and this whole new setup and people and
I
gives
think
a lot of positive energy, right?
exactly. It's a great idea to do it outdoors and water, greenery, right? I think it conveys what we will be discussing.
Yes.
How can we live more in sync with ourselves and our environment?
Yes. How can we continue living together with nature on this planet? You've been focused most of your career on sustainability, carbon neutrality. You're a founder of Enrupt, which is a platform that supports startups, carbon zero, right? Startups. You've been in that space. How did that space change over years?
Well, exactly. I've been looking at elements of it that relate to energy, right? Because in any way that you touch on these topics, somehow you come to energy, to resources, right? We need energy for our lives. We need to produce it. We need to use it, and it has huge environmental and sustainability-wide impacts. So 20 years of career, I will admit. And I'm so lucky because after 20 years, some of the topics that I've been working on for such a long time and they have been marginalized, today are becoming mainstream, right? So what we are seeing is that anything that has to do with production of renewable energy, energy efficiency, circular economy principles, environmental protection, via the agenda that we hear about sustainability, environmental, social, and governance principles, they are becoming mainstream. They are becoming part of any business. And I approximate it to what happened with digitalization. When you think about it, 10 years ago, right, everyone was like, what is this? What is data? What is digitalization? And today a business that does not consider digitalization, you would think it's they have ancient structures, they are not up to date. So that's what I believe, that's what's happening with sustainability, right? We already see it, but definitely, a decade from now, any business that won't have
sustainable agenda, right?
You will think they are outdated, right? You will be like, and that's what we see now, right? Like investors are asking, customers are asking, government is asking, technology
becoming a must, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When you look through the lens of this region, which hasn't been the most sustainable over the previous years, but very promising future, right? A lot of opportunities for growth in that area. Like in line with the work that you do, what can you see?
Yes, and I was thinking back on times when I actually started working as an officer in the European Commission in the portfolio of energy, and back then I was administering European Union collaboration with this region, right? And back then it was very hard to defend that we want to work on clean energy with UAE and Saudi Arabia. It seemed like a ridiculous idea. And look where we are now, right? One of the lowest levelized cost of electricity for renewables are coming from UAE, from Saudi. They both committed to net zero path. They both were very ambitious renewable strategies, energy efficiency strategies. And yes, you can say they are very early on in their journey, but they are looking at it very seriously, and they also have the economic resources behind them, but also they have the necessity, right? Until now, their economic models have been linked to oil and gas. So it's not just nice to have for them. For them, it's a question of, continuity of their economic business model, finding new ways how to go about things, 15, 20 years from now. And that's why I'm so bullish about the region. But it's also linked to the bigger transition that we discussed. It's about where we all find a value in business, and we all had to reconsider that during the past 2 years, right? How do we create value in business? And we don't look at it anymore just as a monetary value. We are trying to find, to define this new
new
value.
Definition of value.
Yeah, what is value?
How do you define value?
Yeah, it can be different things. It means different things to different people, and I think that's what is so complicated, right? Value and sustainability, both terms are similar in that way because, I can have a definition and you can have a definition, and they are valid for each of us, but they can be different. So it's very dynamic. It's about aligning together. But one thing that all this has in common, that it's not one-dimensional, right? So it's monetary, but it's also about people within the company, people outside of the company. It's about the environment, meaning, the physical, but also digital environment, right? So, it's very fascinating to realize that, while we say that globalization might be over in some way, we have become more connected to things that are outside of our companies and us as individuals, right? So, so these are the dimensions that I've mentioned, right? Monetary, people, environment, physical or digital environment that we are surrounded by, and then everyone has to define it in their own terms.
Tell me more about the platform that you built, Enrupt. What was the purpose of that?
Well,
how did you come up with the idea to start the platform? Where do you see the opportunity?
Well, I mean, Enrupt's story is very similar to the story of the energy sector and this transition. Because when I started Enrupt, we were talking about 3 elements of the transition: digitalization, decentralization, and decarbonization. And back then, maybe we called it decarbonization or clean energy, right? So I thought, well, I want to work with startups that connect with all these 3 elements, right? The energy transition was very much about finding decentralized models for energy services, right? We are still thinking about, a building that doesn't need energy inputs, right? That has very localized sources of energy and so on. And we talked about microgrids and how they are applicable in different parts of the world. And that was 5 years ago already, right? And things have changed. Things have changed, especially in terms of how we call them. Right? I am sometimes joking, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but I've always worked on the same topic, but the names changed, right? At the beginning, yes, they evolved. So, when I was in the European Commission, we talked about diversification, then we started to talk about transition, transformation. Now we call it decarbonization, but it's always the same thing. It's about producing energy from renewable resources. It's about energy efficiency. It's about using local energy storage. It's about finding alternative ways of transportation. It's about capturing carbon and the valorization of carbon. Now new things are coming up: direct air capture, hydrogen. I'm giving you the pecking order for decarbonization. So, but when you think about it, like, these things have been around for a long time, and the only thing that is really important now is to combine the things that we can do practically while still innovating for the moonshot opportunities. So
what are the moonshot opportunities that you see?
Well, it's what I don't know. Seriously, right? I mean, that's one thing that we all agree on, and that's why you have, Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and anyone else who has money innovating in this area, is because we know that we don't have all the technologies that we need in order to reach net zero. We just don't have them today, right? So,
in which space do we lack technology?
Well, I mean, when you look at the big chunks of where the emissions coming from, we know more or less what we need to do in buildings. We know more or less what we need to do on the energy production side. Now we are focusing on, we know what we need to do in transport, not all parts of it, right? Land transport, we know electric mobility, but we are looking into shipping, aviation, and the other big chunk, which is not so well addressed, of course, is industry, which is super important, especially in this region, right? And that's why everyone is jumping on the bandwagon of hydrogen, because that could be solution to some of the problems of the industry. Agriculture, right? Again, big emitter of CO2 emissions. And of course, the whole circular picture, there has been a lot of content, especially over the past 2 weeks I've seen, about whether we need to find ways how to consume, while using renewable energy and so on, or whether we need to consume less, right? So it's, just about finding a new way how to live, how to use resources more wisely. Do I need to have 10 t-shirts and each costs $1 and they've been produced by kids who are paid 10 cents a day? Or do I prefer to have a t-shirt that costs $20?
That's that's a big question.
Yeah. It's a big customer question, but it's a big industrial question as well, right?
If you were to be given the role of the chief change officer of the region, what would be on top of your agenda to change?
I would be doing what the people in this region are already doing. It's education.
All right.
Because it's all about the people. It's all about the people. We have the technology, more or less, right? We know what to do, but it's about people. It's about changing mindsets, and it takes time. So I think they got that right here, right? They have been doing that for decades, and we are starting to see the fruits. So like what's happening today in UAE and Saudi Arabia, it's not a surprise, right? They've been preparing the grounds for a long time. So
absolutely. Well, we are happy to be here and witness this from the first row. Katarina, thanks for taking the time to be on the Change Officer.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure. We could go for hours,
yes,
but we need to set up a different session for that.
Yes.
We gave everyone a taste of you are bringing to the table,
Sure.
and we hope to talk to you again.
Okay.
Thanks, Katarina. Thanks, everyone, for staying until the end. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as all of the others before. We have just a little bit more of the STEP conference, and then will be a wrap, and we'll see you on a different event. Thanks, everyone, again. Thanks, Katarina. We'll stay in touch.